One of the biggest disservices to women in business was being told that there was no room for emotions or feelings at the boardroom table. And we're on a bit of a mission to bring that back in. It's like, how do you bring that back into your business so that you're making the right steps for you? Not for anyone else, but for you.
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renee Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. Hey, you wild women. After working for years with leaders and teams in the nonprofit and for-profit space, my next guest has seen how lack of self-leadership can hold people back. She developed this skill of understanding people, having great insight into what they aren't saying and where they are struggling to help them shift towards better harmony. Ashlee has taken her passion for creating time freedom, self-leadership, and her experience curating the life she wants to help others struggling with a lack of clarity, time, boundaries, burnout, and blocks become more empowered, less stuck, and finally in control of their lives. In this episode, Ashlee and I talk about the business scaling death trap and why we feel the pressure to grow our businesses in ways we aren't necessarily aligned with. Stay tuned to the end as Ashlee discusses how the word should becomes our ultimate culprit. Please welcome the incredible Ashlee Livingstone.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, thanks for joining me, despite you being preempted with nerves coming in. Because a mutual friend said, this is something you need to focus on.
I know. I don't know why I let that get to me, but in a good way. In a good way. I think nerves are a good thing.
It is. It just means,
sometimes.
In my interpretation, it means you care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you do. Like, what's your big thing? What's the thing?
I am a personal growth coach. And my big thing is helping perfectionists like myself live a more sustainable, fulfilled life without the burnout, without, all the expectation that comes with life. That's my mission.
Yeah, I get it. I used to be massively burnt out running my agency, and now I have like micro moments of burnout.
Yeah, I think that's when you recognize the burnout and you can adjust and align. And that's a lot what I do with people right now. And I'm a big believer in taking more of the meaningful road than the typical road. I like the road less traveled sometimes. And as long as there's meaning in it all. And that's what I try and help my clients do as well.
And who do you work with?
A lot of high achievers, ambitious business owners, tend to be perfectionists, even though they're usually in denial. Mostly women too. There seems to be a bit of a theme.
I know. So tell us, what are some signs of burnout? I'd love to know some physical signs and as well as emotional, mental signs of burnout.
Yeah. So again, I'm not a doctor by any means. However, the physical signs that we often see with burnout are like you're just constantly tired. And I don't mean just saying you're tired, actually truly tired, where you can't really get out of bed, or getting out of bed is just that long haul. You're getting sick a lot. When you're burning out and your cortisol levels are not high or sustainable, you're more prone to getting sick. Your immune system does not know what's going on. And so if you're constantly one of those people who's like, I'm always sick, must be the kids, check that maybe.
They're a good excuse.
They are a good excuse, but I think we use them as a good excuse for a lot of things. But also just that maybe procrastination, you're working all the time, never really figuring out what it is you're working on. I don't know. I've had stretches too of that where I go to bed at night going, I was so busy today, but what did I do? Right? What did I even accomplish? And I see that when you do that all the time and you're running from one event to the next event to the next meeting, you're just not sustaining it. And that tends to be, when one little thing trips you up, you're probably on your way. Those are some really good signs that you're on your way to burnout.
Yeah, and I feel like you have so many things on your plate that you check off all these little tasks, which gives you this sense of fulfillment, but it's the wrong sense of productivity because you're doing stuff, checking things off, but are you actually doing the things that move the needle at the end of the day?
And this is why I talk about meaningful work, meaningful road that I travel, because there is a lot of box checking in our world right now, a lot of surface fulfillment that I think really prevents us from feeling truly fulfilled or truly accomplished or truly productive.
Yeah, so I'm just going to cameo my planner. So I have a planner called the Morning Practice Planner, and there's essentially a couple places to input. So the one thing, your first big task for the day is in a box, and it says, my big goal for today is not task, but goal. That's it. There's the one thing I need to do today. If it's the only thing I do, my day can feel like I can feel fulfilled, right? Like for instance, yesterday, it's very simple, but it ended up not being simple, was to pitch one of my clients to 5 media outlets. If that was the only thing that I got done, there was I moved the needle for my client work. Within 18 minutes of pitching the first contact, we got a yes.
Amazing.
I know. So I was like, okay, Renee, let's keep going. And then other things came up. But I was like, but my day was complete. And then I was able to spend 2 hours helping my son find a very specific shirt he needed for fancy dress day at school today, which was that's important. That was important, right? But if I had this arbitrary list of things to do just because there's always something to do, I wouldn't have had that time with my son. And I probably would have worked on the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's very easy to get distracted. Very, very easy. And I think a part of why we let ourselves get so distracted is because when we need to focus on that one big goal, it's super specific. And we're really often afraid deep down that we might not make it happen. And then what?
Then we failed. We got to throw in the towel.
Failure.
Done. Yeah. Burn the task list.
Right? And that's part of it. I think we do so much to feel productive and have this sense of accomplishment, but really we're just trying to avoid really feeling disappointed in ourselves or feeling a sense of failure. And that all ties into these needs to be perfect.
Oh man, perfectionism. Let's touch on that, especially when it comes to business, because a lot of the listeners are women in business, often mothers. And I feel like there's this, at the time of this recording, it's International Women's Day, which is very pertinent to this conversation. But the business world used to be really a masculine thing, and it still is. But now we're starting to see these inklings of what it means to have more feminine energy in business. Right? And maybe it's not to blow our business up to $100 million or plus, which if that's what you want to do, so be it, go do it. But there's so much pressure for us to create these super scalable businesses. And I've burnt out doing it thinking that was what was expected of me. And I didn't know I didn't want it until I was in it, but I was burning out. So where do you think the pressure to scale our business comes from? And why are we stuck in this perpetual cycle of pain and growth?
I go back to one of my most frustrating words that is part of the English dictionary right now is should. Because I think that so many people have told us what you should do. As an entrepreneur, you should be making XYZ. As an entrepreneur, you should have time freedom. You should be traveling. You should be doing all of these things. You should have a team. And we take on the pressure and the expectations of other people. So then it's in our head oh, well, it's not enough that I've started my business. It's not enough that I quit my corporate job and I'm doing this work that fulfills me. I should be doing more, right? There's always that what's next. And if that really feels aligned for you and it really feels like what you want to do. You want to reach even more people. And that's really deep down what you want. But I think that so many of us are chasing the dollar figure or the team size or the stage presence or the featured on, that we lose track of how we actually truly wanted to feel and why we started our business to begin with.
Right. Which I know a lot of people start their businesses because they want that freedom. They want that flexibility. And guess what often happens? And there's nothing wrong with scaling a business. Don't misunderstand us in this conversation. It's just that sometimes we don't have the right information. And sometimes we don't feel the sense of accomplishment because we're not hustling. We're not burning the midnight oil. I know Jada Stelner is a good friend. She has a great book out now called like the Anti-Hustle Guide to Building a Business. Rachel Luna, another book about permission to offend. There's a lot of themes around why we need to give ourselves that permission to do things the way we want, our business the way we want, parenting the way we want, how to show up as a partner or a friend or a sister in the way we want, because it feels good according to our feelings.
Yeah, like I 100% agree. And one of the biggest challenges I see is that when you ask someone, what do you want? Now I'm thinking of like The Notebook, that scene when Ryan Gosling's like, what do you want? When you ask somebody, what do you want? How do you want to feel? I often get like a blank stare because nobody has ever really asked them that question before and they have no idea how to answer it. And when they do try and answer it, I get a lot of obligations, a lot of as an adult, I need to. As a parent, I have to. As a business owner, I'm responsible for. But they're not answering the question. And that's the struggle. People don't know how they truly want to feel.
Danielle Laporte is really good in this work too. I really love her. I've only done the Desire Map, but she has White Hot Truth. She has a bunch of work, but really asking yourself how you want to feel is like, it's a tough question. So like a quick sidebar on this, actually, my husband was telling me this morning, he has a good friend, Keith, who has a program called The Married Game or The Marriage Game, where he teaches men. His terminology is teaching husbands or how to get laid. Essentially like making their wives want them. And I'm like, okay, interesting. And naturally coming from a dude, but brought up a really good point. There's a framework he says is called the beer, burger, and BJ. So you think of like an ideal situation for a man drinking a beer, having a burger, and like watching his favorite sports show, and then at halftime gets a BJ. And I'm like, whoa, okay, this seems so offside. Then he asked me, he goes, well, what's your version of that? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I never thought about this. Swimming in a pool of Chanel purses and someone like dumping a really high-end bottle of champagne down my throat. I have never thought about this. But I'm like, every dude pretty much knows. He knows what his moment is. All this to say is, I don't think we actually allow ourselves to feel this way or to think this way or give us the space and permission to think, what is my version of this? Mm-hmm. And I came up with it.
So I will just say, as an aside, reason 101 why I'm a lesbian.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So I don't have to have those kind of, we actually have like good conversation like that. So yeah, I want to know, what's your version?
I felt pressured to actually say something, right? Because it was like in the moment, he's like, what's your version? Because he wants to like me to feel seen and heard, and he wants me to feel. And I was like, oh, okay, really quickly off the top of my head, I want to be in my favorite bikini next to a really beautiful pool that has a view, drinking the best wine or champagne, maybe reading a book or listening to music. And he's like, am I there? I go, yes, you're there, but you're not talking to me. And I go, and then you send me a text message to tell me how beautiful I am. And then you get up and you go, hey, babe, do you want me to get you chicken tacos? And I say, I would love chicken tacos. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to one up that. I know you actually want fish tacos. And then he goes and gets me fish tacos. I'm like, that's it.
There you go.
But why are we so hesitant to say, here's exactly what we want?
Because we've been raised to not say what we want, that we're selfish, right? I talk to so many people. I set boundaries, I'm going to look rude. If I set boundaries, I'm going to be selfish. If I take actual true time away from my children or my business, or I don't go to the family event, I'm selfish. right? We've been told so much that what we want is selfish.
Or lazy.
Or lazy, yeah. And we should be doing for other people, which I also think is some of the reason why we want to scale, because we want to employ other people. We want to give them a future. We want to do well by them. But it's actually now just taking from us again. And we don't realize it because this is just a habit that we've been doing since we were kids. And if you don't, how do you feel?
Right. Perfect example of a conversation I had with my parents yesterday. So I do CrossFit and we just finished the Opens. And in my age category, in my division in Canada, I came 20th, which I'm like super proud of. I work hard. My dad is 77 and he does masters track and field. And in the world, he sits at like the top 6% for discus and shot put. My sister is the captain of like masters ultimate frisbee team for women. And then my mom, and I was like, oh my gosh, my mom's on the phone. Now I feel like I have her left out. Here's the thing. And I was like, I'm just going to paint the truth, Mom, is you are a great athlete at putting everybody else's needs first before yourself. She always talks about all these things that she would love to do, but she's too busy taking care of other people that she's never done something for herself. Yeah.
And that's also what we've seen, right? We've seen that. And that's no discredit to those folks that really get a lot of joy and fulfillment out of it. I think that's great if that is fulfilling to you. And I think that there's many of us that just do it because that's what we think we're supposed to do.
And we also don't question it. We don't question the narrative. We don't question what the norm is in life, in business, right? And so like even coming to this, it's like, I remember starting my second business and somebody asking me, well, what are your financial goals? And I was like, oh, I haven't actually thought about that yet because I was prioritizing who I'm serving. And he said, oh, but like, how about you plan out what it looks like to get to $1 million? You could probably do this in like a couple of years. And I would say, okay, help me work this backwards. And it meant a certain amount of revenue each month growing. Month over month, that meant employing X amount of team members, having all these clients. And when I actually faced the truth, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I can do it. I'm capable of doing it, but I know what that means. The alternative is I'm away from home, away from my kids. I've already done this. It doesn't feel good to me. So, we think about a company growing, and I think less than $1 million seems to be mediocre. That's like the narrative, right, that we're seeing these days. Where do you think that comes from?
I do think it's a very masculine energy, those expectations, and people brag about it all the time. I think it is a bit of that keeping up with the Joneses. There are certain clubs that only female entrepreneurs who hit this number are allowed to join. So why wouldn't you think you should? It's exclusive. And in some cases, non-inclusive because you haven't hit that number. So many coaches that I see too, it's serving women who've hit 7+ figures. And if you haven't, then you're not in. It's now this new club. And that social pressure alone can feel like I should be doing this then. I need to get there in order to belong. And what do many of us want so badly? To be seen and to belong.
I think of one, my business was like at $1 million. It was literally $5 less than $1 million in annual revenue the year before. And I applied to EO, not to throw them under the bus, but there we go. It's out there. And they denied me. And I said, I'm there. I'm also a woman and you're looking for more female representation. I could provide, and it was an immediate denial. Like, no, come back next year. And you know what? And I didn't. And I don't think I'll ever will. And it's not to say like there's a reason they do this. And it's like the conversations that these people have at that level are different because it's not your first month of business conversations. It's like there's different levels of conversation, the levels of mentorship that's provided to these people. I get it, but it also leaves out a lot of people that do belong.
Absolutely. And we spend so much time like chasing success metrics without thinking about the real cost. So even in this, like, what is the real cost of not having diversity around your table for these conversations? That maybe people who are making $1 million+ in their business really actually need to talk to somebody who isn't there yet to learn about, I don't know, something else in their business, like something else that's important. Like feeling or chasing the boundaries or how to inspire your team and different things. Like there are different conversations and we can really segregate it so much that turns out you're really just talking to one other person, right? And I've been part of groups too that are just for moms in business. And I thought that was even interesting because the way I parent might be very different than the way you parent, and we're both moms. Yes, we have children, but it doesn't mean we do it the same way. And my mom's a mom. If she was in this group, as somebody whose kids have moved out now and she's got grandchildren, we're not in the same spot. So just because you're at a certain level doesn't mean that you can relate to everyone at that level.
Yeah, there's something about this, like, what is it, 7-figure? It's actually, I might be a hypocrite saying this, but it kind of irks me these days, seeing I'm like a 6-figure or 7-figure business. It's like, that's great. But really, can we talk about how like mentally well people are on the other end of this? How are they feeling? Are they actually happy? Because that's kind of like your stamp of, I've made it. I'm a 7-figure business. But at home, I'm divorced now, or my kids don't see me, or I'm super unhealthy. Like I've been through this, not the divorced part, but everything else. And all in the name of saying, I'm a 7-figure business owner. But really?
Yeah. So what was the real cost then to you?
It was my health, my mental and physical health, which took me years to dig myself out of. I'm really saying like probably a good 4 years to come out of that. Because burnout is often slow. Right? It's a slow thing. You don't know you're actually in it until one day you're just like, it's called hit the wall. You hit the wall. And then you're like, something's got to change. What is it? I don't know. Start with one thing. But it was just this perpetual need to want to grow. And then not even want to grow at some points. It was like, I feel like I have to. I've got this momentum. I can't go backwards. If I go backwards, it means I've failed. If I go backwards and I lose revenue and I cut clients and I have to let team go, then I feel like I've failed. However, maybe on the bright side is I have more capacity in my life. I'll put it this way. One example on this was I've used to have this PR agency, which I employed 12 people and we did well. And I paid myself a certain income. And now I'm doing the same work, but not with an agency, without the headache of that overhead. And I'm paying myself the same amount. It's crazy. So when people say like, what's your growth plan? I'm like, I'm in it right now. This is it. I'm happy. I don't want that stress right now. And maybe my mind will change later on, but I'm happy with the way things are right now.
Yeah. And I think that's where you have the awareness of how you want to feel. And when you stop feeling that way, you can say, oh, what's out of alignment here? And that's a lot of the work that I do with people is I help them figure out, what are your actual true priorities? Like, what are your priorities right now? Not the priorities you thought you had 10 years ago or the priorities you're going to have when you retire, because we either think so far in the past or so far in the future. What do you want right now and how do you want to feel? And when you don't feel good, that means there's something that's got to change. We're allowed to feel good, right? And in business, I think, one of the biggest disservices to women in business was being told that there was no room for emotions or feelings at the boardroom table. And we're on a bit of a mission to bring that back in. It's like, how do you bring that back into your business so that you're making the right steps for you? Not for anyone else, but for you.
As part of the intake process to be a guest on the show, I have all guests complete an intake form. And one of the questions I ask is for the guests to leave me one of their quotable nuggets. And Ashlee did so well on this job. She said one of her quotable nuggets is, we need to spend more time paying attention to or drawing attention to our wins, progress, and successes versus what we didn't do. This mindset shift has been a game changer for me and my clients to see the proof when our minds want to hold us back. And I want to add to this, as this is one of the key areas why most women don't hire a PR professional or they don't do their own PR, let alone record a video of them for social media. They're afraid of the attention and afraid of the work. Maybe this is you. It's all about consistency and courage. And I want to share a program that I have that's easily accessible to most female entrepreneurs. Instead of committing to 12-month retainer, which will cost you thousands of dollars each month, while I'm not advocating for this because time is money, but maybe you're just not at the revenue level that allows for that type of service yet. So I have this program, of which I only have a handful of spots available each month, called the VIP Day. This is a strategy over breakfast and PR ready by dinner method. I craft your custom PR strategy and implementation plan all in one day. That includes custom pitches, a media kit, a media list, and so much more, as well as insider secrets. I even have professional journalists review and edit all my pitches. It's like me giving you the keys to my fancy car without signing a lease. Vroom, vroom. And I have crafted this program specifically for the woman who has a growing business with a VA or one or two team members that can help implement the plan. You get the keys to your custom Ferrari and let your dream team drive you around. Sounds pretty amazing. All you have to do is go to wewildwomen.com/VIP day to find out more and to schedule a call. That's wewildwomen.com/VIP day. What you made me just realize is now there's this chatter around menopause leave. Have you heard of this? I'm like, hallelujah. I actually have a brilliant invention that I came up with last night. I'd like to share with somebody someday. But we were never permitted to, let alone talk about what happens in our bodies as women, let alone ask for a menopause leave. Even my husband was like, what's this all about? I was like, let me tell you, we've been silenced for so long about the pain that happens in a woman's body at every stage in their life because it wasn't allowed. Like, toughen up, buttercup, was what we were told. And now we're like, no, actually, this is debilitating. And I need to step away from work for a couple of days or weeks. I'm going through a thing. And what happens is, like, when you honor a person's physical or mental challenge and you give them that space to heal, then they actually come back as a better contributing person at home, in society, on the job. But if you're always
likely more loyal,
100% more loyal. If you're always putting them through the ringer, then they're going to leave. They're going to burn out. They're going to get sicker.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I grew up in a household of women. Like, I have two sisters and my mom, and we never talked about it. We never talked about anything. And that was just like how she was raised as well. And we're stopping that now. Like, I talk about it all the time. I have a son and we're like, there's tampons everywhere. Like, he's going to grow up knowing. And I think that this is just part of it, right? Like, sometimes other women have held other women back too. And my big, word or phrase for this year was collaboration over competition. That I've spent so much of my life feeling that I need to be in competition or comparison with other women specifically, that's held me back in so many ways, that if I can collaborate and grow with, then I'm going to be much better off.
I can one-up you on that.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm so competing with you right now. I just realized how this happened. I was like, oh, damn it, Renee. I think it was Ed Milet that said, I don't believe in competition. I believe in completion, in helping complete somebody. And even the term complete, but the whole idea is they might be a competitor, but how can you still serve them? And the moment he said that, I thought, oh, I feel so much better now, because the business world, we're raised in this business world to look at our competitors in such an angry, hated way. And they're just trying to do the same thing you're doing. It just so happens to be in the same space. But we can look at them now and be like, ooh, maybe there's a way I can honor them. Maybe there's a way I can help them, because, at the end of the day, people decide on buying from you based on how good you are. So it's like how fast, I forget the trifecta of business. And for me, when it comes to PR services, most people will sign up to work with me because they like me. And you can't really compete on likability. You either like somebody or you don't. And so if we can help other people feel more complete, that's like next level, unlocked.
Yeah.
Not to be in competition with you, but let me one-up you.
I was like, thanks for one-upping me and making me feel...
Yeah.
No, but I get that. And I think that it's just, I think we're in this age of awareness about what we want, awareness about how we behave. And it's not to put more pressure on people to do things differently all the time, but just to almost have that awareness. You feel like you might be burning out, just pay attention to the red flag, or let that a little voice say, this doesn't feel right. And then take the next step, right? We don't have to drop everything. And I think that's a big piece too, is people are afraid to look at this because they think, I don't have time to take on more. I don't have time to reinvent my life. I don't have time to shift gears. But you don't have to do it all so fast. You've got time.
Yeah. And like in business too, in getting your time back is we have to look at these moments of like, how do you want to feel in your business? And for me, it's freedom. I want more time to be with my family. I don't want to have to be trying to be with them and thinking that things are getting done, but knowing that they're getting done. So it's a delegation, right? It's delegation. And then I get that time back to fill it with something that is more meaningful to me.
Yeah. And understanding too that you don't have to have a team of 12, right? But you can have a team of 1 and you're still successful if that feels good to you. If you have one person to delegate to, and delegating might be different to different people. Like maybe you're delegating things in the house, right? Or you're delegating things in business. I think that we constantly think of delegation as just business, but there's so many places in our lives that we can be delegating, right? And we just have to give ourselves, again, give yourself permission to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Release the perfection.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And even in the delegation, they say 80%, like your version of their task done at 80% is perfect, right? So don't be nitpicky about the stuff because that's the hard thing is when you actually delegate and you're like, oh, you did this wrong. This is how I do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's flip the coin here. There could be some listeners that are like, but wait, I want to scale my business. I want to scale it with pride. What are some steps that people can grow their business without burning out?
Yeah. And I think that's really fair. It's paying attention to how you want to feel. So start there, whether it's like the Danielle Laporte's kind of desire map, if you want to explore that, but really starting to pay attention to what your intention is. You know, I'm a big believer in moving forward with intention. I've really curated my life and I'm continuing to. It's not static. I'm constantly moving. I'm constantly being very purposeful on how I spend my time, where I invest my money, where I want to make business moves. So if you want to scale, just know that there's intention behind it. How do you want to show up as a leader? What types of people do you want to surround yourself with? And take those very purposeful steps to do that. And I think it's also important too to understand what your blind spots are. So what has held you back potentially in the past that might continue to hold you back now? What stories and old beliefs about success or about good enough or whatever your story is, we all have lines of stories behind us, but paying attention to those and recognizing them so that you can avoid falling into that trap that you likely have continued to fall into.
Yes. And there's another one too. I think it was the last episode with Shelley Lefko. She talks about how our beliefs guide us. And our beliefs are just a story that we've given meaning to. And it's not necessarily true, right? We've just given meaning to the story that we now believe. And that means that meaning could mean I'm only successful if my business has X amount of employees or has this amount of revenue. I am a failure if I have to lay off some employees, right? So these are the meanings we give to those stories that aren't necessarily true. And so that stops us from actually leaning into our truth, actually being okay with wanting to feel a certain way in our business and growing or not growing our businesses.
I also think too that a lot of these stories, while we have brought them on ourselves, when you slow down and look at whose story it really is, most of the time they're not your stories. They're somebody else's story that you have taken on as your own. And I love to give people their stories back.
Polish it off.
I've done a lot.
Give it back.
I've done a lot of work on giving people their stories back. And it creates more space in my body and in my mind for my own stories. That intention that I want to set for myself about how I want to feel and how I want to go about getting there.
Yeah. I've started to ask myself if I had grown up without any sort of social media, any news, literally in the depths of a jungle or forest with no exposure to outside stories or influence, and I had the same husband and kids, how would I have raised them differently? How would I have showed up as a wife differently? right? Because we don't have that influence. Like we will have like basic education about like what's healthy and what's not for our bodies and mind. But without that influence, how would I have raised them? And it scares me to think, I don't know.
Yeah, well, we can't ever know. I think that's also the hard part is it's really an interesting question. I think that's like a really cool journal prompt, actually. Like, what would you do differently if you had no limitations, no stories? What would you change right now if you could? Letting go of the I can't because, or that would never work because, or yeah, sure, but not for me. If you could do anything or change how you feel or the way you raise your kids, the way you run your business right now with no limitations, what would you do?
What I would do, I would have to think about that. With oh geez. I think like even just you asking that question makes me feel better. I don't even know the answer. It's like you've given me more freedom. You've given me capacity. And here's the reality in this is whatever I think of can happen. It's not unrealistic. But I stop myself from saying the story because it's probably shunned upon or not permitted. Like the first thought that came to my mind was, oh, well, I would homeschool my kids because I like to know that they're home and I could have more control over the type of education. But then I would think about like, what does my mother think about that? Then what does society think about their like the social aspect of it? So I stopped myself from saying that.
I think this is what keeps people so stuck in the like forward momentum, because stopping to think about a different path is so uncomfortable. And they think about what you've invested into this already and all of the work that might have to go into reversing it.
Well, then it's them potentially admitting that they've been wrong.
Yeah, or wrong. So I'll challenge that. Is it wrong or is it what was right at the time and it's no longer right for you?
In this house, we call it new information. If I'll say, but wait, I thought you liked that peanut butter milkshake. They don't anymore. Why not? New information. I found out that there's 1,400 calories in this peanut butter milkshake and I don't like it anymore, right? So now it gives you permission to change your mind because you've taken in other information to help you make a better assessment.
Yeah. And I think that's all it is. You know, people go to school, go to university for 4 years and you start a career and you invest all this time and all of these things. And then you realize you don't like it. New information. It's okay. Change your path. You don't have to be an accountant for the rest of your life just because you...
Well, talk about pressure to put on a 17-year-old hormonal kid about what they want to do for the rest of their lives. The kids that take gap years, I'm like, good on you. Smart thing to do, right? Because then you can really learn about yourself and the opportunities out there and try a bunch of new things because you have this liberty now.
Yeah, I'm a big believer too. And I hope that I continue. I mean, my intention is to continue parenting this way, that not that I don't have any expectations for my son. I expect that he will change his mind multiple times. And I really want to empower him to do that. Because if he decides he wants to go to university, great. You want to change course? Fine. Because I know what it's like to feel so trapped in a should and an expectation. I don't want that for him. I don't actually want that for anybody, which is, you know, what really motivates me in the work that I do. I believe that there's more than one good choice for people.
Yeah, I mean, and you think about it too, you hopefully learn more as you get older and you get wiser and you collect that new information. So whether it is in growing your business or parenting, and then you can use that information to make better decisions. And it's okay to change course. Like I did, I went from PR agency owner to business coach back to PR because I was denying my truth and what I wanted to do because I was told that it's not scalable, that there's a lot of work. It's such a shamed and shunned upon industry. And I was like, you're right. You know, I shouldn't do that. But I've always wanted to come back to this. New information.
New information. I really like that. I'm going to start saying that, I think, around the house. New information. We're allowed to change our minds.
The shoulds of life. I love that. Oh, is there anything else that you want to add?
I mean, I feel like I could chat with you forever. So
same.
For the sake of all the folks listening, I mean, just don't even let this conversation overwhelm you, right? I think that that's a big part of it is people get so overwhelmed sometimes with new information and they think that they have to immediately change everything. It's that like instant gratification. Baby steps are okay. Progress is okay. And it doesn't have to be that all or nothing, right? You can take your time and just be intentional on how you do it.
Okay, overnight success is a lie. Nobody has that. I mean, maybe nowadays with like TikTok and stuff, but really you think about behind the scenes, the years of like blood, sweat, and tears it took somebody to grow a business or write a book and publish a book. And there's no such thing as overnight success. And we shouldn't even strive for that. Because I say sustainable businesses grow sustainably. And what that means that the people that are growing that business are mentally and physically healthy and happy.
Yes. It's the whole mind, body, soul. How are you showing up in your community? How healthy are you in your business? How healthy are you in your life? And if the business is going great, but everything else is falling apart, then to be honest, the business isn't going as great as it could be. If something else is draining your energy, it's impacting whether you think it is or not.
That's so true. That's such a good point. So if your business is going well, but everything else is falling apart, it means that your business isn't going well. And my first thought goes to because you haven't properly created the systems or boundaries for yourself or your team or delegated accordingly.
Yeah. It's the upper limiting yourself. Until you're truly aligned in all the different aspects of your life and you're putting those how you really want to feel for first, there's going to be all these little things that keep pulling your attention away until you do it.
Okay. So much to think about. I should let you go now.
Yes, you should.
I have one more question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
So I get a very mental picture when I think about me being a wild woman. And this is me in nature, by the ocean or by a Great Lake here in Ontario. And I'm just like in the water being active, like my feet in earth, like my hair just being wild. That's what it means to me. To me, that is the ultimate part of freedom. And I think freedom and wildness kind of go together.
What does that feel like?
Liberating. It feels calm. It feels joyful and totally feels possible.
So we all need to go back to the wild.
Yes, we do.
I love it. Okay, this was such a great conversation. Ashlee, if people want to go online to find you, where can they go?
Yeah, so if you head over to my website, that's probably the best place. It's ourforte.ca. And I actually have some cool freebies on there for perfectionists specifically. If you want to find out how perfection's holding you back or how big of a perfectionist you are, there's great little quizzes on there that you can take and see how you can turn things around without the overwhelm.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time, the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.